Everything. That's going to stop. House in Baltimore and WNST.net. We're live on Radio Row. All things Super Bowl 53, our coverage brought to you by our friends at LifeBridge Health Sports Medicine Institute, as well as our friends at Royal Farms. Real fresh, real fast. I'll get back to the Western fries when I get home. This is the point in the program where we talk some X's and O's and nerd it up a little bit. Luke is here. Aaron Schatz is here from Football Outsiders, and I've known Aaron for about a decade and a half, and we get together and talk about the game or Tom Brady, but I think we want to pin you down on some Lamar Jackson and some future of the Ravens and some future of the RPO.
You always have to talk about the local team, too.
Well, of course, and I know Luke loves these conversations because he and I go at it back and forth, and time to time I get you on. This is where we had a lot of football people sit in the chair here and say, I'm not in love with this whole Lamar Jackson thing as a institution or a concept of winning Super Bowls. And Luke, I'll let you pick it up, but it has been a theme here this week, has it not?
There's no question about it. I mean, I think everyone loves his gifts. I think everyone sees that. I mean, you can see how unique he is, but in this, I mean, we're in such a pass-happy era, and the analytics support passing the football as opposed to running. I mean, the Ravens are really kind of going against the grain, and I think there's an understanding, and they've acknowledged, yes, he needs to get better. Yes, we're confident he will get better as a passer, but I think they've made very clear, especially with their shift to Greg Roman as offensive coordinator, they're going to continue to be a run-first team. And, Aaron, I want to hear your thoughts on kind of the big picture of where they're going, and then we'll get into the specifics of Lamar.
But I think that there's a combination, right? I mean, they're going to continue to be a run-first team. They're going to use RPOs, but they will acknowledge that Lamar Jackson needs to get better as a passer. And you do not take a quarterback in the first round of the draft if you do not have some feelings about his potential as a passer.
Right.
They feel he can get better as a passer with a full training camp, a second training camp, which is a full training camp as the starter, that hopefully he can get better as a passer. The other thing that I would really worry about is, my God, they have got to practice the exchange.
Yeah.
The number of fumbles.
Many at the mesh point.
Many at the mesh point. He cannot continue to fumble like that. I mean, he actually...
That's fundamental, isn't it? And I keep going back to fundamentally, it's going to happen. I don't think there's any way to eliminate it when the running back doesn't always know whether he's getting it.
But it's very different. With Lamar Jackson, the number of fumbles, the rate of fumbles on those handoffs was way different than with other quarterbacks that do the same mesh point thing.
I would say the same thing about this, and I don't mean to be facetious, but if you jump out of planes long enough, the parachute's not going to work. You just, when that is the style you're going to play, the ball's going to wind up on the ground more often than it would in any sort of tradition. Maybe not as much as it has, but you're going to have to accept that. That's going to be part of the game here. Kind of like Brett Favre and interceptions. You had to accept it because that's the way he was going to play.
But it's got to be better than it was this year. He actually came out in our values as the worst, like the most negative running value for a quarterback, and the main reason for that was plays that were coded as runs but were botched handoffs.
Right.
It wasn't that Lamar Jackson
dirting the ball
outside did well. 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 4. I mean, even 3rd and 5. Sometimes they were running and having a lot of success. But yeah, I want to go to back to what a lot of people were talking about when the Ravens made the change at the bye week, and what we heard so much about them running the ball was time of possession. It was helping out the defense. The defense wasn't having to play as many plays. I know there have been studies as far as time of possession, what impact it has on the defense. And I just wanted to get your position on this because I think I know what you're going to say here.
We've never been able to show definitively that it matters, that having a high time of possession makes your defense play better because they're more rested. I mean, it's one of those things that it's common sense, so we want to try to show it with research. We've never been able to show it with research. And there have been plenty of times when a team has had a low time of possession because they score really quickly, but they just outscore the other team.
Well, this is where the baseball nerd in Luke takes over and saying that if you're a Kurt Schilling 120-pitch pitcher, is your 118th pitch as good as your 85th pitch or your 55th pitch? Or if you're a different kind of pitcher that's a 90-pitch pitcher, I would say every player's endurance would be different along that continuum. And certainly when Terrell Suggs plays 24 plays only in pass rush situations, you're probably getting a better football player than you're going to get when he's out there 60 or 70 times, right?
The flip of the idea that we've never been able to do research that shows that time of possession influences defense is some of these Patriots games in particular from the last couple of years of playoffs where they've run like twice as many plays as the other team.
Right.
I'll give you an example, which is the AFC Championship game. The Patriots lost the turnover margin. They had fewer yards per attempt, yards per play, than Kansas City did, and they had more penalties. And yet they won the game because they ran twice as many plays. Once you're over a certain barrier of efficiency, you don't need to have explosive plays. You need to have lots of plays. And it's not that it's not as much that it keeps the other team off the field, but there is some evidence that if you're running twice as many plays as the other team, the defense gets tired at the end of the game. I mean,
you're also winning when you're doing
that. It seems weird, right?
No,
like it seems weird. Like why would the defense get tired and the offense not get tired? But some of it is just it's more tiring to not know where you're going than to know where you're going. Right? The offense knows what it's doing. The defense does not know what the offense is doing. They're playing backwards.
Say that again, because that was profound. It's easier to not.
It's more tiring to not know where you're going than it is to know where you're going. The offense knows
sort of
where
like my
it's going.
travel trips, right? I mean, you plan a trip to a city, you know where you're going, you get there quicker.
And I think it's tough to really figure out how much of an impact it's having. Because in the case of the Ravens, you look at what that defense did all year long. They're also getting off the field just because they're that good. And I mean, I remember earlier in the season before they made the change, the New Orleans game that they lost with the Justin Tucker missed extra point at the end of regulation. New Orleans controlled the ball like crazy early in that game. And you might say, the Ravens' offense was the problem. No, they were like 14, 15, 16 play drives, and they could not get off the field. So the time of possession, both sides of the ball have an impact on that. So I think it's too simplistic, even though it's kind of intuitive to think, all right, you run the ball, you can control the clock. Well, you also need your defense to go out there and get a 3 and out if you're going to keep that formula going. And I think that's where, in some people's minds, I think some people didn't give the Ravens defense enough credit for how that formula was really working.
Well, I was writing, a lot of the second half. Look, the offense in our ratings went down when Lamar Jackson became quarterback. The reason that team improved was the special teams and the defense, especially the defense, went up in the second half of the season. So I know people were like, Lamar Jackson is leading us to all these wins, but it was the defense that was leading Baltimore.
Well, they were also dog-ass tired down there in Charlotte, and after
they were
the
also
Tennessee
banged
game,
up at that point too.
Yeah, and all of that sort of went away after the bye week when they're only out on the field 40, 50 snaps, and when the offense is out there.
So that's one, right. I mean, listen, that's the flip of that, right? The question is, okay, the defense improved more than the offense. Did the offense help the defense along? And that's just, we've never been able to prove it with research or disprove it with research. Just have to keep doing more research.
Aaron Schatz here from Football Outsiders. You can follow him out on the interwebs. Tell me what you do at Football Outsiders, and then I want to get to the theoretical Joe Flacco in the future question.
Mostly Football Outsiders. We like to just talk about, we do advanced analysis of the NFL, also a little bit of college football. It's mostly advanced statistics. We also do some film study. Basically, we're trying to look not just at gambling, not just at fantasy, but at really why teams win or lose. Why is your favorite team going to have a shot at the Super Bowl? Not going to have a shot at the Super Bowl.
I affectionately call you nerds.
Yeah, we're football nerds. That's accurate.
That's why I like these guys.
I put myself in that group, so
That's
I'm okay
fine.
with that.
That's good. It's fine. I try to be more nerdy. That means I learn more. Joe Flacco. I had Sal Paolantonio pound on the table and knock my camera off that Joe Flacco was going to win again and be in a position that might be a better place. I've had nobody bag on Flacco. Whether you have affection for him and you're from Philly and Ron Jaworski or Sal Paolantonio, who did pound on the table, or me, who just likes him and pulls for him because I think he's a special guy and a special competitor. We'll measure his heart and all that, but measure the stats. Statistically speaking, if you are a general manager in this environment and you need a quarterback, and there's many places, as there always are. Last year it was Minnesota and Washington and wherever. This year it's Miami, it's Jacksonville, it's Denver, it's Washington. We can go through the list of places where he might or might not land with what offense and what's around him. some thoughts about Joe Flacco and a guy like him statistically versus Nick Foles or where he is, or versus where Matt Ryan or Matt Stafford would be if they were to hit the market right now as a $25 million
I'm sorry,
quarterback.
but a lot below. He's a lot below. Certainly Matt Ryan.
Fair enough.
Matt Ryan is one of the top 5-6 quarterbacks in the league at this point. He's that next level down after the Breeze, Brady.
And you know why I measure him against Matt Ryan? Because after the Ravens won, I wrote a book. And when I went in with the scouts, every one of those guys, but every one of those guys said in the beginning of everyone wanted Matt Ryan. The owner, Steve, wanted Matt Ryan. So now we got to tread on the tire. Matt Ryan should have won at least one Super Bowl, maybe two, as Mike Smith said. Flacco certainly could have won two or maybe even three if you start to, put those pieces together. Yeah, bottom line is, here we are a decade later, Flacco's won, and Flacco's now been thrown out of his organization. There's some in Atlanta would love to throw Matt Ryan out, but to your point, they're not very smart people.
No, I don't. I mean, Ryan is still up to, okay, in the half a season that he played this year, Flacco had the best numbers that he's had for the last 3 or 4 years. So it really becomes a question of how much do you trust that versus what his performance was the 2 or 3 years before that. Because the 2 or 3 years before that, he was below replacement level. But he also didn't have receivers as good as the receivers that he had in the first half of this year. John Brown, for example.
And also the running game is a part of that, too. The down and distance.
Yeah, but he had the running game last year with Alex Collins, played great last year, and Flacco's numbers were still terrible. Not 2018, in 2017.
2017.
I mean, I think if I were a team, I would not want to be handing my franchise over to Joe Flacco at this point as a permanent guy. I think the idea of Joe Flacco as the bridge guy to the guy you draft, especially when the quarterbacks in this year's draft are not considered, it's not considered a great quarterback draft.
Considered day one
They're not
guys,
considered day one guys.
Get there, there'll be 3 guys.
He's a good leader as far as a guy who has chemistry coming off the bench when your starter gets injured and can bring the team around him. That kind of John Kitna backup leadership ability.
I don't think he's going to do that with $100 million in the bank. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know that. But
it's not just about money. It's about the pride of continuing to play for some of these guys.
I think he believes he can still go win, and we're going to find out how lit that fire is and what he has left, because sort of thrown out the side door, watch the season end, move the offense around, never put him back in. I mean,
the dream is that you end up in a situation like Kurt Warner, where you're brought to a team to be the bridge quarterback, and the young guy fails, and you go in to replace him, and you get all of your old moxie back, and suddenly you're back in the Super Bowl. You keep your career going in hopes that you land in that situation, right? Maybe no team hands you a starting job, but they hand you a job where, Warner was going to play until Leinart was ready, and then Leinart played ahead of him, and then Leinart got hurt, and Warner came in and was so good they couldn't take him out, and Warner just got all of his greatness
back. At Nick Foles.
And that's the dream for a guy like Flacco at this point in his career, is to have that happen.
Well, Nick Foles will be the other guy, and he's in line in front of Flacco, right? Or am I wrong? I mean, most people seem to think, well, if Flacco Foles isn't available, and I guess pound for pound, dollar for dollar, this is going to be the interesting thing. The value of these guys in the aftermath of Kirk Cousins and Alex Smith.
I think you ask a little bit, how much is Foles worth without the Doug Peterson offense? I do think you have to ask that a little bit, whereas we've seen Flacco in a couple of different offensive schemes. I don't think anybody feels like the offensive scheme made him, so you don't have that same question. But I agree with you. My guess is that teams would rather sign Foles at this point than Flacco if they're both free agents.
I mean, he is 4 years younger also.
Foles is 4 years younger.
And Flacco, and this, I think, even if this isn't measured analytically speaking, one of Flacco's greatest strengths early in his career was his durability. The fact that you had the same quarterback on the field for 16 weeks, when you see how a quarterback injury for even a couple weeks can torpedo a team, that durability's not there anymore. I mean, he's just
we haven't seen him move like a 20-something-year-old quarterback at all. We've not seen him move in that way.
I mean, I thought from a mobility standpoint, he was more mobile in the first half of this season than he's been the last few years. Maybe it's because he's another year removed from the knee injury, maybe the back. But
age takes other things. Right. Age is not yet at the point where it's going to start taking his deep ball, but in a couple years it will start taking his deep ball the way. If you see, Brady doesn't throw deep like he used to be able to.
Sure.
Breeze doesn't throw deep the way he used to be able to. It was obvious in the championship games that both of those guys had problems throwing deep.
Pat Mahomes walking behind you. He can throw short or long or
one of the greatest first-year quarterback seasons. Incredible.
So seeing that and then looking up and seeing Brady and Goff, This is where is Lamar Jackson going to be able to beat Pat Mahomes in a big game? Where's Baker Mayfield on the continuum? We had Kelvin Beachum sit here the other day talking about playing with this young kid from the Jets. So, there are some guys here, right?
I love Baker.
You're a Baker guy.
Baker was awesome in our projections going into his rookie year. Baker was awesome in the second half of his rookie year. I'm absolutely a Baker Mayfield guy. And Darnold's got some promise. Darnold was really strong in the second half of the season. Look, Lamar Jackson is not as good as prospect as those guys. That's why Lamar Jackson goes 30 seconds.
Sure.
It's fair.
I think a lot of people forget that.
The odds that can he become as good a quarterback as those guys can become? Yes. Are the odds as good? No. That's why you go 32nd and not first or third.
I love sitting here talking football with you as the Backstreet Boys walk behind me. So it's just awesome, right?
I'd rather talk to Aaron Schatz
anyway.
This is when I 20 years ago. This is totally how I imagined my life.
I'm gonna go get a selfie with Nick Carter. You guys nerding up for football, all right?
Oh, he's really leaving. My goodness.
The funny thing is, nobody I know would know who that was. If I took a selfie with Nick Carter, they'd be like, "It's some guy with nice hair."
My sister would know. That's about it. But Aaron, I want to give you a chance to plug your site. It's called Football Outsiders. You guys, you're not a quote traditional site in the same way that we view ESPN.
We're not in locker rooms,
but
we're not, talking. We're an analytics site that comes from the outside, but that also means we're not beholden to anybody.
Right.
And we try to bring that outside perspective. We're not really interested in old wives' tales about football. We want to test what people say. We don't want to just believe things because people have always said it in his,
Sure. I just high-fived the Backstreet Boy. Wanted to make sure I wanted it that way while we were doing it. It's all good. I'm sorry. It's just it's a circus around here. What can I say, man?
There's a lot going on right now.
My wife's booking guests or people. It's just it's messy around here.
One thing I wanted to bring up to you, because I've started to slowly but surely incorporate this into my writing for my audience, because I've been someone who I write about baseball as well. I cover the Orioles as well. Wins above replacement in baseball has become much more accepted in the mainstream.
As a way to do analytics.
Right. So I want to give you a chance to plug DVOA, for example. I've started to use that more and more.
Yeah, it's a well-respected. Listen, it's not going to be used as often as baseball because baseball has just always been more of a statistical game. DVOA takes every play, looks at the success based on the down and distance, compares it to a baseline that's based on situation and opponent. And it's a really good way of looking at the efficiency of a team that kind of filters out some of the effects of context, or to look at the efficiency of a certain player in certain games. You can split it by down. Because it's play-by-play, you can split it in a lot of different ways to look at what a team's strength or weakness is. How well they cover number one receivers, how well they do in the red zone, how well they do on third down, etc. But my thing has always been, I don't need to see my stats used on broadcasts. What I want to see is my ideas used on broadcasts. Ideas about efficiency, ideas about passing being more efficient than running, ideas about coaches needing to be more aggressive on fourth and short. It's the ideas that I want to see in the broadcast.
Right, and I think that's one thing I've really tried to read up on, and this idea of establishing the run or needing to have the run established for play action to work, and the analytics don't support that.
Because there's always the danger of the run. Unless you're a team that never, ever, ever runs the ball, the linebackers are going to go off that run cue no matter what.
Right. So, I think I think football fans and the football community as far as media are slowly but surely starting to become smarter. And I think hopefully at some point, I think we see the teams that are having success typically are the teams that are more enlightened here. But
the Eagles was a really big deal for the analytics world last year, because the Eagles were pretty open about their use of analytics. They were open about their aggressiveness on fourth down, and that really helped us. For them to win the Super Bowl really helped us take a step.
Got Anchorman actors.
See, you should have been listening to all of this. You're the guy I'm trying to bring up to speed on some of this stuff.
Kirchner, I believe is his name.
Backstreet Boys.
Heckner.
That's Champ from Anchorman.
Why didn't you get him in here? What are we doing? We're talking football. All right.
So are you back now?
Backstreet's back. All right.
What football nerd question do you have right now that you want to know about?
I'll come up with it. We got Andrew Zimmern walking around here. We got chefs walking around.
I
want to talk about food with food people. Come cook with me, man. Bring some spice to the program.
You're going to give him this
Yeah,
one?
you want to talk some food?
I love talking food. I'm a big fan of
He's
his shows.
coming over later. He's coming over later, right? Man, come on, man. Let's cook some crab cakes, bro. That's what I'm talking. I'm talking football here. Don't make me do this. My team's not in it. Your team's in it.
His team is.
My team is in it. I've been very
Are you
honest.
sick of this shit?
No.
He's the one
Tell
person
me
who
how you
isn't.
froze your ass off at Sullivan Stadium with 12,000 other people and nobody cared about the Patriots.
I
and-
didn't because I was 10,
How old are you?
44.
I'm 50, so I'm a little older than you.
I mean, look, the
I had
fact
John
I
Hanna here the other
jumped
day,
on the
you know?
Patriots bandwagon the same time everybody else jumped on the Patriots bandwagon, but people are wrong to think the bandwagon was Brady. The bandwagon was Parcells. No one cared
That's
about
fair.
the Patriots till Parcells, but it's Parcells when we all jumped on the bandwagon. It's not Brady.
I'd go along with that.
It
I
was
remember the mid-'90s. I mean,
93,
everyone was,
94, we all jumped on that Patriots bandwagon.
everyone was all in on Bledsoe.
Parcells and
friggin-
Bledsoe.
And you should be embarrassed you wore those pajamas. to the
Those
Super
early
Bowl.
90s teams, the Dick McPherson and Rod Rust, man, that was some terrible, terrible garbage.
But like after, yeah, I saw some of those games. That was awful. You're right. Yeah.
1-15 one year, 2-14 the next.
Name some of those quarterbacks after Eason.
Hugh Millen.
Hugh Miller.
That was the early years
Ooh.
of Scott Zolak, who's now the color commentator for the team and does radio in Boston.
There or there.
Maryland
We're
guy.
all behind.
Wade,
you.
right, Maryland guy.
Yeah,
That's right.
Zolak's a Maryland dude.
Wade, I can't remember his last name. Ended up in Seattle later.
Oh boy. Boy, Patriots quarterbacks of the early 90s for
Pre-Bledsoe.
$100.
It's pre-Bledsoe. Scott Sequel.
Scott CQ. Oh, wow. Wow.
Right. And then if you go back earlier than that, you get to Tony Eason and, of course, Steve Grogan.
Sure, Steve
The
Grogan.
man who coined the phrase, the most popular guy in town is always the backup quarterback.
By the way, Matt Cavanaugh was the most popular guy in town in some of those eras, right? Matt Cavanaugh was around for a minute or
Yep,
two,
he
too.
was. He was.
Aaron Schatz here. It is Football Outsiders. Go check him out. He's one of the best in the business at breaking down the X's and O's and teaching nerds like me, or, well, nerds like
me.
Luke.
I go to that site
exactly.
5 or 6 times a week, easily.
See
Great
that?
stuff on there.
Thank you. We appreciate your readership.
This is what your readers and listeners look like here, Aaron.
They look like
I don't know
football
if that's a
fans.
good
And then there's
thing.
guys like me wanting to talk food about with Andrew Zimmern and you're worried
Hey, look,
about.
I like to talk food with Andrew Zimmer too, man. Get good durian talk.
Good. We'll get some food in here a little later on. We're live on Radio Row. It's all brought to you by our friends at LifeBridge Health Sports Medicine Institute at Foundry Row in Owings Mills, as well as Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast, and the tasty fried chicken. And I don't need Andrew Zimmer to tell you that the Western fries are also special. We're on Radio Row. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. Streaming live right here on our Facebook Live. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.